Welcome to this second webinar of our four-webinar series. And this week we're going to meet the change makers, which is really exciting. Can't wait for this one. And this is the fourth day awareness four-part webinar series, Earth Day, where we're going to be regenerating our planet from the ground up, which is exactly what we need to be doing. As ever, we all want you to have a great experience. So we'll be muting you all through the duration of the webinar to ensure we have really great audio quality for all of you. It's really important. But you can always put things in the chat if you want to. We'd love to know where you're coming from. So please let us know where you're watching in from on the chat, and also your questions. So we will have time at the end of this webinar to talk to our panelists today. So start putting those into the Q&A so we can start collating all those amazing questions. We had some great questions last week, and we want you to have a great time and enjoy. So without further ado, can I please ask the panelists to introduce themselves? Nicole, can you go first?
Hi, lovely to see you all. Nicole Masters. I'm an agroecologist, educator. You may have read my book, hopefully, For the Love of Soil, and I'm based in the Paradise Valley in Montana.
Thank you, Nicole. And Nicholas.
Hi, I'm Nicolas. Hello, everyone. I'm an environmental engineer. I do regenerative agriculture, and I'm based in Cyprus.
Brilliant. And Luke.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luke Luca. I'm a co-founder at the Soil Food Web School. Very happy to be here today amongst this wonderful panel of some of these people here are my heroes, personal heroes. So I'm really excited to be here today. And Nick, could you introduce yourself, please, as one of my heroes?
Thank you very much indeed, Luke. So yeah, Nick Padwick, farmer from the UK in Norfolk, and studied at the Food Web School, and also took the amazing Nicole Masters Create course last year. So really great to see Nicole again as a panelist for today's webinar. Luke, over to you.
Yeah, as I said, I'm really excited about today's webinar. Nicole, I've been following your work for over a decade. As I say, you're one of my heroes, one of the first people who really inspired me to join the regenerative agricultural movement. So it's great to have you here. You are a real change maker and a real hero in my eyes, and I know that so many people at the Soil Food Web School feel the same, and we're always really happy when you join us on a webinar. I'm really excited. Nicolas introduced himself a moment ago. He's also a hero of mine here in Cyprus, produces the most amazing olive oil, I think, in the world, and I'm really excited to hear his presentation today about that and all the great work that's being done here in Cyprus. We had a big team here in January from the school, about 30 people, and we were very privileged to visit your farm, Nicholas. So I can speak personally about the great work that you're doing. Nick Padwick, I know you're going to be presenting just a few slides on yourself as well today, telling us about the work you're doing in Norfolk, which is also really incredible, with over 1.5 miles in length of compost rows under production. Nick, I know you always are very shy to present that, but I'm looking forward to it today. Nick, do you want to tell us about webinar 1 in this series, which happened last week, please?
Yeah, you guys missed a great webinar we had last week with Diddy, talking about how soil health influences climate change, with water cycles and biodiversity and all the amazing things that she aspires to and what she does. So, but you can you can absolutely review that again back on our channels. That's live, and I believe it's on YouTube. So please log into that one and watch the amazing Diddy talk to us last week. That was a really great first kickoff of our 4 webinar series. Luke, what have we got? What's our next one after today?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Next week at the same time, the same place, we will be unpacking the soil food web approach. It's a 3-step approach, as many of you will know. We'll be taking a deep dive. We'll have some members of the science team on that one. Nick, you're going to be here again as well, as will Brian Dobenspec, who is also a large-scale compost producer. As I say, it's a 3-step approach. So we're going to take a deep dive into how everybody everywhere in the world really can harvest beneficial microorganisms from their local area, from their surroundings, how you can multiply those microorganisms using the scientific composting approach that Dr. Elaine Ingham has developed over the years. Then you can apply those microorganisms to your soil, to plant foliage, offering nutrition and protection from pests and diseases. So that's a really interesting webinar for anybody who's new to the soil food web approach, or anybody who wants to take a deep dive.
Yep, looking forward to that one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Luke. That's going to be a good one. And then we finish off this 4-part series with webinar number 4, which is on Earth Day. So come and please join us on the 22nd of April. We'll be having a great Earth Day community house party. We've done a few of these before, and it's great. We go off into breakout rooms, and it's kind of themed, and you can jump in and out and get an idea of what's going on. It's a great place to be and to celebrate Earth Day. So, with that in mind, what we're going to do, we're going to start putting a bit of we're going to start our way into this series, into webinar 2. We've got some presentations from Nicole, who's 20 to 30 minutes. We've got a bit more time, as these are great speakers. We've got a lot to learn from these guys and girls. And then Nicolas has got 30 minutes. You've got 10 minutes of me. And then we've got a video which we're going to play, and we'll try and get between 40 and 50 minutes of questions, Q&As. So get your questions in the Q&A box, and we can really start sharing some great information. If you've got any queries about what Nicolas and Nicole have been talking about. So, shall we crack on? Nicole, it's great to see you. Really looking forward to this. So over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. We won't get too confused with the Nicolas and Nicole. We'll be great. So thanks for having me, Soil Food Web School. It's always great to have a conversation with you guys. There's a copy of my book, For the Love of Soil. If you have not seen it or heard it, please do grab yourself a copy. So I'd like to just go a little bit back in time. I finished my degree in soil science and ecology, and I did this really intelligent, thoughtful process, which was I came out of university pregnant. It was an immaculate conception. No one else was involved in the situation whatsoever. And my father, that same year, decided to buy some land in New Zealand. He'd finished a career flying for Cathay Pacific, and he brought this property. We looked on maps and rainfall maps and climate maps around New Zealand and decided this would be the sweet spot. And it's in a place called the Bay of Plenty, which makes sense. And we were just above probably where you would sensibly grow avocados. However, the soil was beautiful, deep, beautiful volcanic soil. So this is Thanks, Debbie. This is basically what the property looked like. This is 2002. So we'd had the property for 2 years at this point. You can see avocados had started to be planted. This is not the whole property. I just wanted to zoom in on this part. We planted around 700 avocado trees. And very fortunately, in 2002 was my first exposure to Elaine Ingham. And she mentioned that soil was alive. I'm like, what? This was not mentioned at university. No one said that soil. I mean, I found soils exciting before the discussion around the role of microbiology and nutrition. So it was definitely an aha moment. So this property had been predominantly sheep and beef. Before that, it had actually been dairy. So right in the middle of that is a building. You can kind of see the white. That was the old herringbone dairy shed. There's a concrete platform there, the milking platform, and I turned this into a worm farm. Not quite the 1.5 miles of composting that Nick's got, but I'll work myself up to it. And so we had manure waste, we had avocado waste, whatever that is, wood chips, and pig manure. Anything I can kind of get my hands on has started to feed worms. And thinking about how do I encourage fungal diversity, I created a very fungal dominant vermicast. So I had different beds that had different ratios of fungi to bacteria. So I could use some of that on the pasture. Some of it was for avocados, the very high fungal amount. And for some reason, some of my biggest buyers had dreadlocks and $50 bills, and they wanted to use vermicast to plant a crop that they didn't need to check on. And so they taught me a lot too about nutrient availability through microbiology, which was pretty cool. So this was the property in 2002, and then this was the property 2012. No, I'm making up numbers. I'm trying to think when I took this photo. 2016. Right. So what we did is you can see that to the left-hand side, we restored a wetland. So we actually planted 3,500 wetland species. We planted in orchards as well, and shelter belts. But when we planted the trees, this bird came behind us called a pukeko, and it just pulled every plant out, basically. So I think we planted 3,500 trees, and we had to replant 2,500 trees and flax and nurse crops. But what was so fascinating to me was in came the blackberry, in came gorse. Thanks to the UK for those ones. That's your fault, Nick, to send those ones over to New Zealand. But amazing nurse crops is a forest came from underneath that nurse crop. And so on that left-hand side now, we actually have a standing forest. When you go in there, it's absolutely extraordinary. But it really arose from just allowing those soils to become more fungal dominant, and walking away as the seed bank in this soil was just incredible. So yes, that was an interesting part of the journey. And then starting out as a single parent in rural areas is not easy. And I started my business, Tiger Calf Worms was the name of it, in 2002. And I found myself a contract doing household waste minimization and working with larger, like this one on the left-hand side. That's my son there, Bryn, who must be probably 4 in that photograph. I got a contract, which really, really helped me build up my own agroecological business at the same time as being able to pay the bills, which, for those of you wanting to start your own businesses, oh God, it was a game changer. But that's my vermicast on the right-hand side. Look on upon it, Nick, with envy. But so there's a lot of wood chip in that material, white wood species specifically, poplar, willow, birch, beech, elm. All of these species really stimulate fungi. So I'm doing the same thing here now that I'm in the Paradise Valley. But as far as I'm concerned, no one does it better than what comes out of a worm's butt. It literally is the elixir of life, designed perfectly for what plants need. So yes, so in 2006, a friend of mine said, hey, look, I need you to come in and talk to me about soil. And at the time I was, running workshops, but I certainly wasn't confident in terms of consulting. We fought about it for quite a long time. And he's like, look, I know a lot about growing vines. you know about soil, let's get together and just have a conversation. And from that, I've really discovered what we call agroecological coaching, which is walking alongside somebody, not being the expert that's going to tell you what to do, but really helping somebody understand and see their soil to a much deeper extent, to be asking the questions of I wonder why. So in this particular property, it had come out of potatoes, not where those rocks are, but on the right-hand side, that had been potato country. They were doing 6 herbicides a year. They couldn't control the weed pressure. They were using fungicides, pesticides, everything you can imagine, all the stuff that probably should be banned, and they still couldn't control the pest problems they were having, but also they were growing super low quality, basically cast wine. So they weren't getting paid for what they were doing either. So working with these guys, we used a metabolite product. So there's no living biology in this one. It's brewed over about 10 days. You take biology through a bust boom cycle, and you're feeding them a lot of different things. And you might put trace elements in that. You might be putting a bit of potassium or phosphorus. And so you're stimulating those phosphorus solubilizing bacteria, for instance. And then they go to sleep or they get killed through that process. But what they've released is their metabolites. And this product is one of the most phenomenal products that I've used. We can use it with anything because you don't need to worry about the living component. And what this meant was within 2 years, 80% of the herbicides were removed. They went to a single application. The weeds disappeared. No more trace element issues, no more pest problems, and they went to a super premium wine. If you're interested in reading more about it, it is on my website. But the key to this really was metabolites. It was like, I'm not going to put biology on and maybe have foreign biology that's going to disrupt the system. I'm just going to provide the metabolites, the microbial signals to turn biology on or off. And as a response, we got something like this. So for a first time out the gate consulting, this was very good. It was really good for my confidence. It really helped me, I guess, polish the art of asking questions, of getting really curious, especially working in viticulture. I had worked in pip fruit, so pears and apples and avocados, cattle, but never with grapes. So this was a really, really cool experience. And Bruce Nimmin, who I work with, was just such a phenomenal partner. He was so kind and so inquisitive and curious himself. And this is my favorite clients, I have to say, is people that bring that curiosity and are willing to fail, right? This particular example, this was my friend Nick Patterson. I talked to my students about find your top 5. Find 5 professional people who are going to really mentor and really walk alongside with you. And Nick Patterson was absolutely integral in my learning. This study was done in 2005, 2006. So Nick's place is on the right-hand side, just another Nick, just to add that into the mix. And on the left-hand side is Integrated Pest Management, owned by Plant and Food Research in Hawke's Bay. What they discovered, so on the left-hand side, Integrated Pest Management, they're not using compost because you'd be crazy to use compost. They're irrigating because you have to. They made it very pretty with herbicide, and then obviously we have the terroir of glyphosate coming through our apples. Lovely. Sorry, New Zealanders are very sarcastic. I find the English get it, but anyway. So they had 2.6 kilograms per meter squared, just in those top 10 centimeters or that top 4 inches of soil, compared to the 3.8 kilos. So not quite twice the amount, but nearly, of soil carbon in the right-hand side. And this was shown all the way through the profile. I'm just showing you this top section because I want to show you something. So Nick Patterson was predominantly using compost. He had also done some training with the Soil Food Web. He has pasture in between his rows. This photograph was taken in 2005. By 2010, what was interesting is the sward changed, and what started to grow was wild strawberries and alyssum. So we saw the grass actually shrink, and it turned into more herbaceous plants, which is what you want to see, right? You want to see that in an orchard situation, is it's telling you that you've gone more fungal dominant, which we have biology tests for this as well. But visually, that's one of the things I want to see. What are the companion plants to something like apples, right? Now, hold on to your socks, because if you haven't seen this before, this is going to blow your mind, right? And this is old data, right? This is 2006, 7. This was published in 2009, but the work was done anyway. On the left-hand side, what you're looking at, this is a tomography machine. You're looking at 10 centimeters down or 4 inches. We're basically taking X-ray images of the pore spaces in the soil. So the left-hand side, the dark is soil, and the white is your pore spaces. So on that standard integrated pest management, most of that connectivity is pest insects. What you're going to see in there is going to be cicadas, mole crickets, root weevils, things that live under the ground that generally, oh, good morning, that generally are chewing on roots. All right, so we might have nematodes in there. You're probably not going to see worms. On the right hand side, 78% of this soil was totally connected by air spaces. There's more air in this soil than there is soil. When you walk on these soils, you can feel it, they bounce. And we got this working in viticulture as well. On gravels, is we can have more air in those soils. And like it blow, you know, you might get taught about soil, and they give you a pie chart and they say, you know, half of this is minerals and a quarter of it's air and a quarter of it's water. What we've found in these regenerative systems is most of it is air and water. So these soils become very light and fluffy. There's no restriction to gas exchange. We're not going to get a buildup of alcohols. We're not going to get a buildup of ethylene. And what's also super cool is they, as you do as a scientist, and I think Elaine has done some of these interesting experiments, they put 2,4-D on the soil on the left, and then they applied water. And if you can imagine, if you have a heavy rainfall event on a soil like the one on the left, that water hits that surface and then it just rushes off. So we're going to get no infiltration. That water's going to go and flood, I don't know, LA after a fire, let's say. So we get all this water moving, but it takes that 2,4-D with it, which, if anyone's working on the Great Barrier Reef, it's the big reef killer. On the right-hand side, if you added water, that water absorbed into the soil. They put a liter of water on the top, and I think 600 mils came out the bottom, right? So that water's being held and absorbed. Here's our sponge. But what was fascinating is they measured the soil, and there was no 2,4-D. So it's a common herbicide. I think it's present in like 600 different herbicides contain 2,4-D. Anywho, no 2,4-D. So they went, all right, what idiot forgot to put the 2,4-D on? Let's do it again. Did it again. Same result. Microbiology had broken that down. My office mate coming in had taken apart those different components of that 2,4-D and bioaccumulated in their bodies, which means when someone else comes along, they're going to eat that and keep that out of the system. So some really cool research. I do recommend you go and look at that paper. It's not the only one, but sometimes we hear like, oh, this stuff is so new and there's not enough science. Go in the literature, all right? There's loads of science. We're talking about decades and decades of reductionist science also in the regenerative sphere, as you can find things like this. So I got invited to the US in 2013 by Ranching for Profit. I had been to the States once in my teens, and I was like, I did like Disneyland and Universal Studios and went down the coast, and I was like, yeah, America can kind of, that's fine. I don't need to go back. So when I got invited, I was like, cool, you know, that sounds like a marvelous opportunity. And I just never wanted to leave again. I think I walked into the main hall, and there were like 600 ranchers, and they're like, howdy, ma'am. I'm like, people are real. I'm like, I really did think, yeah, yeah, I've read a lot of cowboy books. I've always been enamored, I guess, by living with horses, with landscapes. And yeah, that was it for me. I think I felt like between the geology and the rocks and the wildlife, it just absolutely captured my heart. So I have now been in the States on and off really since then, while I was still traveling, right? So I had a horse trailer, and I would travel from property to property. So 2 years ago, or January 2023, I decided to really set my roots down. I've been living in a horse trailer since 2015. So I've been living in the Northern Hemisphere in a trailer and then traveling through Australia and New Zealand. And I was like, you know what? I need walls. I need to kind of put my hands back in the ground. So what was so cool, though, is I found probably the most degraded piece of ground I could find. So they always say, you know, buy the worst house on the best street. So Paradise Valley, which I hadn't realized at the time because I wasn't watching Yellowstone, but this is where the TV show is meant to be filmed. So it's got very expensive. Anywho, so on the left-hand side, this is coming out of winter, right? But what you can see is the amount of bare ground. Most of what was covering this ground is a Russian rye, which, as you can see on the right, it's allelopathic. And if you zoom in and if you can take a look, most of the grasses in there are a plant called cheatgrass, and also nodding thistle, grows some beautiful nodding thistles. So actually, I'm stoked, right? I want to start in a system that's as degraded as this to see how quickly can we move the dial. It makes it a lot of hard work, but it's 80% bare ground. I'm not going to till it, right? So there's no tilling going on. There's no herbiciding going on. How do we start to increase diversity? And it's been derelict for 30 years. So just even the action of bringing in horses and 85 chickens has really helped bring this place back to life. So watch this space. Ecdysis came and did our baselines last year, looking at water infiltration, bird populations, insects. And it was actually really surprising to me, even though like the soil itself, like very poor water infiltration, is some of the measures are moving, right? We've already started to awaken these soils, already starting to awaken fungi in particular. So I'm quite excited. We are putting seed out with the horses, and then this season I'm going to drill. I'm actually going to put some stuff out. I have a cyclone sprayer from Chaos Springs. I can put my a little bit of mineral in that. Probably not a lot, but I'm going to use some minerals as biostimulants. Vermicast, of course, and put vermicast out, but I can put seed out into the sprayer as well, which is really, really cool. So I think it was 2021. I'd been on 24 ranches. I was through Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota, and this sort of stuff was going on, right? So the grasshoppers this season had been so bad that the roads were actually slick with it, and meteorological departments were saying that there was rain coming, but in fact it was grasshoppers showing up on the rain radars. I've been on these 24 properties. 22 of them only had roots an inch deep, right? And that's across some fairly well-known properties, unfortunately. And as I'm driving, like the winds were so strong, there were trucks on their side. And I actually have a photograph of the power lines were down. We had to drive out into the field to get around these power lines. There's a dust storm that's blowing, and this dust storm went from Alberta all the way down to Texas. And I know it's not funny because actually people are dying. I think 254 people have died in the last decade around then from dust storms in America, right? And then above that is a lightning storm, and then in between it is smoke from the fires that went all the way to Oregon. I think we had 600,000 acres of land on fire between me and the coast. And I'm looking at the window and I'm like, oh, like literally Armageddon is happening right now in front of my eyes. And I had that sort of sense of sinking, like, oh, it was pretty overwhelming, I must say, this whole ride. And it was like a 4-hour drive to get to my next stop. And all I can say is I'm so glad that this was my next stop. I don't know why that photo flipped. I apologize. This is the Ingelins, Betsy and Roger Ingeland. And when I arrived at their place, I've got a photo. Oh, I took some photos out and I must have taken the wrong one out. Anyway, when I got to their place, they had grasshoppers, but what they had was spiders, talking thousands of spiders. And one spider will eat about 2,000 insects in a year. And they were all the little grasshopper carcasses were lying at the bottom of each of these spider webs. And so to walk through their fields, yes, they were dry, but there was no grasshopper damage like there had been in every single other property I'd been to. I literally just wanted to lie down and cry. What's cool about working with the Angelins is they love to trial things, right? So he's trialing bale grazing on the left. That's one of the big bio sprayers in the middle. So this unit can do the same thing kind of as mine can, in terms of being able to spray seed and minerals and biological brews and compost. He makes beautiful vermicast. And they're putting seed in with their mineral on the right-hand side, and also things like humate, so long chain carbon to feed microbiology. But just, oh God, just such inspiring people. But what's interesting is one of the conversations that we're having right now is around ecosystem services. And you might have heard this. It's certainly a term that's getting thrown around more and more, I think, from the carbon markets. Maybe not working as well as they could, as they're starting to look at, oh, well, we could do ecosystem services instead. What I want you to understand is ecosystem services are planetary life support systems. It's the reason that we get to live and breathe and have water, is because of these planetary life support systems. So they did this study, and again, it's in New Zealand in 2008, by the way. And what they showed on conventional dairy is that dairy property was providing about $62 a hectare in planetary life support systems. Let me see if I got the next slide so I can show you what I mean. No. So planetary life support systems might be clean water, greenhouse gases, pollinators, the food. So this includes food. Now, the best practice industrial conventional dairy was providing about $1,500 a hectare in life support or ecosystem services. The regeneratives were providing $6,500. So when we talk about the impact of dust, or we talk about the impact of water quality or steel, or like the huge water crisis that we're currently about to hit like a train at full speed, is the regenerative properties are returning that water to the aquifer. It's worth something. What you do on your land doesn't stop at your fence lines. We are all affecting each other. We're affecting our neighborhoods. We're affecting climate variability. They just had a study coming out showing that the tornadoes and the megastorms that are hitting the east coast of the US are due to land management. I mean, shocking. Are we shocked, Nick? So shocked, is that we're increasing heat and variability across a landscape increases the volatility of storms, right? This comes into these planetary life support systems. How do we regulate? How do I think about my landscape, like the skin and the blood, in terms of, do I have a more even temperature? Can I hold on to moisture? Do I feel hydrated, right? All of this is about our land management. It all comes back down to microbiology too, all right? The management's the key part and often the hardest part, right? Like, who doesn't like maybe making some compost and putting it on? It's your management. That's the number one piece that we need to be focusing on, and also the management in the mind, right?
10 minutes, Nicole. 10 minutes.
Cool. What?
10 minutes, Nicole.
It's easy peasy, mate. All right. I'm going to well do that. So integrity soils, we've been working with Ingeland Angus, so Betsy and Roger Ingeland, since 2014. Within a 6-year period, over 40% of the land area, just in a 16-mile diameter around Betsy's head, I like to say, is now being managed using regenerative adaptive soil practices. Now, the models and estimates of ecosystem services, life support, predict that these ranches are providing services to society and to the environment. In 2018, they're providing probably around $384,000 from this cohort of producers. It now potentially is a maximum of $130 million in ecosystem services from one community, just from one community. Like, boom. We're at the tipping point in areas now. And what I think for me is very insightful is Montana is the least regulated and the least legislated state anywhere in the US, right? Farmers and ranchers are not doing this because they're being told they have to for climate change. They're not doing it because they're being told they have to because of water quality or water usage. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I was on a property and we were branding, like a full-blown traditional branding. There was 16 ranches there. Every single one of them was running a regenerative program. And as we're branding, head and heel, you know, like proper branding, a helicopter flies over. And I said to the ranch owner, I'm like, what's that? And he said, oh, well, last year we sprayed algae on the fields and we got a great response. So we're doing it again. And I'm like, here we are with some of the oldest, most traditional management and families who are doing some of the most innovative stuff in the world. And so for me, I'm almost going to stop saying regenerative, Nick. You might be the first to hear that because it's just common sense. How do we get off the loops? How do we feed microbiology? How do we restore equilibrium in systems? But also, how do we just bring joy and creativity back to farms and ranches? And that's what I hear from these producers. I'm hoping we're going to get some funding. If anyone knows any funding, we'd love to do a study of what's happening here. So this is 26 different ranches just in one block. Now, if I pulled the map up and out, there's far more producers in this area doing this. It just happens to be this is the zone that I zoomed in on. But there's something very exciting happening afoot. Take heed, take heart. How does this sort of thing happen? It happens through curiosity. It happens through people not being dogmatic. Like, that's what I love about these two, is they're not dogmatic. Whatever you want to do is however you want to do it. Stop telling people how to farm. No one likes it. Do you like it when your parents tell you what to do? No, you don't. So try to like tell people how they should run. It just doesn't work. If we have a conversation that is from curiosity and you can say whatever you need to say and you can do whatever you want to do. Oh, so you're spraying 2,4-D. Okay. Or you drink glyphosate. All right, let's have some conversations. Open the doors, take people for a walk across the properties. The first time we did a workshop, they had 170 ranchers came along. They are people that are well respected in the community. They are on the Cattlemen's Board. They're on the Angus Association. They're in the Republican Party. People respect them. And then they open the doors and they're like, come and take a look. All right. And we're not going to make you wrong. And I think it's such a beautiful pathway to how do we shift. Because if you ever noticed, a lot of people who have been doing amazing work, their neighbors are not interested. And in fact, there's like a big wall or maybe shotguns involved, is they're not interested in what you're doing. And in part, it's because the dogma came in. So take the dogma for a walk out the door and start getting interested in your neighbors, getting interested in, let's have a conversation because this just makes sense. I don't care what your belief system is. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're thinking you believe in aliens. Don't care. Let's have a conversation about how soil health just makes sense, right? So I just want to quickly share this because I think it's really it's quite a visual, a powerful thing to do. So these guys are based in Colorado. It's the Oswald, Stephen Nancy Oswald. This project was with Annie Overland in 2020 and then 2021. So remember I said it was super dry. They applied 35 kilos of the Johnson Sioux, so a high fungal compost. On the left-hand side, that picture there is their meadows, their high mountain meadows. Biologically, when they test these meadows are like 2-to-1 fungi to bacteria, very fungal dominated, really good grazing management. These guys are doing a great job. But for some reason, the paddocks or the fields closer to the house, which they call the cheatgrass fields, have not moved using management, right? And cheatgrass is probably an indicator of what's growing there. What's also growing is purslane. So that you can see it on the front, on the left-hand side. So they sowed a cover crop across the whole field, and then they did 1-yard trials. And they did this because when it's really dry, they didn't want to invest in trying to get something growing if they weren't going to get any rainfall. I think that had 3.5 inches the year before, right? So super dry. What's that, 120 mils, something like that. So what you're looking at, those green patches are where they put the Johnson Sioux. So at 35 kilos, we're talking about 3.5 grams a yard. Is my math right, Nick? If you're doing 35 kilos a hectare, that would be 3.5 grams a square meter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about
So
right.
tiny, right? Little drips, tiny little drips. Then what you're seeing is the sorghum Sudan, right? So those green squares are where, and there's quite a few of those little yellow flags, but that's where the cover crop actually germinated, and that's where it grew. Everywhere else, like you can kind of see in the front, little teeny tiny little plants really struggling. But this is the difference of if I can stimulate that fungi in this environment, then I'm going to help that plant. Now, what was interesting is they did this on those high fungal fields. Nothing happened, right? They didn't get any response whatsoever because that's not what was missing in this particular situation. So do little trials like this. Doesn't cost you anything, and make them simple, right? What's going to work? What worked well? What didn't? And this is just looking at that root system around the sorghum Sudan. So we see what I call the Rastafarian roots, those lovely dreadlocks. We can see darkening of the soil already. And that's just in that first initial start, right? So how little does it take? What is it that's missing in your ecosystem? Is it biology or is it not, right? So might not work in every situation. So do some trials. I just wanted to mention this and throw it into your biology thinking, is there's something called biogenic amorphous silica. So silica exists in the soil in about 1,000 different forms, right? Silica in its raw form is the most common element in soil, but it's all about how it functions. So your biogenic amorphous silica can be as much as 6% of your soil. It forms a silica gel that has water saturation. So 1 unit of the biogenic amorphous silica can hold on to 700 units of water. It's a gel. It's a silicon gel. And what we see is if you're mismanaging your soil, so overgrazing, tilling, a lot of chemical use, just being a big meanie to your soil, your bacilli will be less than 1%. We're losing that water holding capacity. It's all about biology. So the biology get hold of that leaf litter and they convert those silica forms into a biogenic form that holds onto water like a gel. Rudolf Steiner was talking about this in the 30s and 40s, I'm pretty sure, right? So that 501, if you're into biodynamics, that's silica. So we now put a little bit of silica into our biological applications to just stimulate this process, right? If we're putting it on with a bit of compost or a bit of carbon, we can get that going. I don't know. Do you put it in, Nick?
We do.
Silica? Just
small amounts. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't breathe it. But yeah, really, really good. I just noticed a spelling mistake, but that's fine. So I just want to mention quickly CREATE. So CREATE stands for Consciously Regenerating Ecosystems Through Transformative Experiences. It is a 36-week long intensive school for people that are interested in agroecological coaching. So this is not the place to come and learn about biology, right? It's not the place to come and learn about grazing. It's the place to bring all your knowledge together so you can start to teach and empower others. Was it a transformative experience for you, Nick?
Absolutely. I can't speak highly enough of it, Nicole, honestly. So much so that you're my mentor. So
that's right. Was it an easy thing for you to do?
No. But I say the most rewarding thing I think I've done in my entire life. So yeah, it takes you out your comfort zone, but I would absolutely, as I've said to you many times, I would absolutely do it again.
Oh, so cool. I know you keep saying that. I'm like, how do we make that work? So we have 24 places. It's a global program. We generally have, well, not generally, people come from around the world. There's a picture of the world. What I love, though, is so we survey our students, is that 100% of them agree that it profoundly altered their ability to diagnose on-farm or on-ranch challenges, that it increased their ability to effectively coach and train producers, and have 100% improved their technical understanding of mineral and microbes. You know, we intertwine all of this together But what I love is it is a global program. I think we're up to I think 15 different countries have now attended Create. So every program has people working from around the world. The survey is, we need to do a new one, but when people leave Create, they generally go straight into the workplace. They either get headhunted, they rewrite their job description, they start their own business. What did you do, Nick?
Say that again. What do I do about what?
What did you do? Did you start your own business? Did you rewrite your job description?
I did all of that, started my own business, and so much so now, Nicole, that you'll be pleased to know I've just employed someone else to help me.
Woo! We dance. That is such great news, Nick, because now you can, right? So what
Yep.
Create trains people in is what's been holding you back. What's your scarcity thinking? How do we adopt a regenerative mindset towards how we're dealing with our businesses, how we deal with landscapes, and how we work with people, right? And so it makes something possible. Do you think that you could have done that before Create? Were you ready to your own
I
business?
didn't. I didn't have the confidence, even though I think I'm quite a confident chap. But it's certainly
Yes.
given me a lot more confidence in myself and what I'm believing in, and actually not underselling myself, because that's what
Yes.
people tend to do. So you certainly gave everyone on our course the confidence to do all that. And you've got
Yes.
literally you've overstepped by 6 minutes, Nicole. Come on.
Oh, no way. So what? I'm
Yeah.
at 36 or 26?
You're 46. So you if you can wrap up, that'd be amazing.
I'm not 46. We started at like quarter past.
10 past.
We didn't start on the hour.
No, we didn't. 10 past. 30
Yeah.
minutes.
So, oh, that's shocking. I'm sorry. I'm not normally really good at that. You gave me 10 minutes and I slowed down. All right. Well, I'll pass it on. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with this crew. You guys are phenomenal. I think just leave you with this question. What can I do today to foster more diversity, abundance, and more life in every conversation and every step that we take on the landscape? So thanks, everybody.
Nicole, as ever, just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, you absolutely deliver every time with the passion
Oh, thanks.
and drive that you have, and it's it's infectious. So really, really appreciate you taking your time to speak with us all today. And I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions for you. I'm sure at the end. So thank you. Take a well-earned rest. Have a drink or something. And without further ado, Nicholas, are you ready?
I am. Hi,
Brilliant.
Nicole.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm going to hand over to you, and let's hear your journey and what you've got to share for us today, please.
not easy to pass after Nicole. Uh, so yeah, I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about my story. About 20 years ago, I was a very angry young man. I was working as an environmental engineer in waste management for big waste management companies. And I was dealing mostly with organic waste management, so all sorts of food waste and things like that. And that got me into looking at uh, our food system, basically. And that made me even angrier. And I'm just gonna, show you how it looks like. It's just pure, utter madness, and that's where our food comes from. And I basically quitted everything and started going to travel. And I got very, very lucky. I bumped into Robin Francis in Australia, and I stayed in her place. And that's where I discovered permaculture. And that was, it's basically her place blew my mind. I could see life everywhere. I could see interaction everywhere between all the different living things that were at her place. And I decided to pursue education in that. And then I went to New Zealand, where I was trained by Joe Polisher from Rainbow Valley Farm. There was Darren Doherty there and Jeff Lawton. Went back to Australia, and then I started working in the field. And fast track to 2012. I was invited in Cyprus to do consulting. I was in Jordan at the time, for a farm in Cyprus. And when I arrived there, it was quite shocking. It was a very different environment. I was coming from Jordan, but there it was even worse. It was even drier in that place. It was in the rain shadow. But just to go back a little bit, in Australia, I met with Paul Taylor, who was one of the early students of Dr. Ellen Ingham, and he trained me in the basics of soil biology. And that's where I started understanding the relationship in the soil and starting understanding the microbiome. And this was really pioneer work, and it still is today. I've been studying soil biology since then, so almost 20 years now, and we're still a pioneer. It's still a pioneering field. When you look at the science, yes, there is a lot of science, but it's still the early days. So everyone who's involved in that, at this moment, we're still pioneers. We're still figuring out things. We still don't understand really the complexity and the diversity of microorganisms. And it's the same in gut microbiology. We talk a lot about it now, but we don't understand much. But what we understand is principles. That's what we have to work with. So what we're looking really is to what we're looking to do is to increase diversity and numbers of soil microorganisms, and that drives the soil function and structure, moisture, fertility. So when I arrived in Cyprus, that piece of land was this one here. So it was 2016. We were working on another piece of land just behind that one, and then 2016 we started working on that one, which is right in the buffer zone. It was tilled for subsidized, so they were not even growing wheat, but there was EU money coming in if you were tilling the ground. So they were just tilling it, tilling it, tilling it. And at that time, we had an average rainfall of 250 millimeters a year, with summers well in the 40s degrees Celsius. So nothing really was growing there. And what we did is first I looked at water, right? There was no sources of water on spot. So the good news with very degraded landscape is that we had a very high runoff. So I designed water first before designing anything else. That came from my permaculture training, rainwater harvesting everywhere. So we design access, structure, everything around capturing this water as much as we could. And we designed an irrigation dam which was big enough to cover irrigation need when the grove will be fully grown. So everything was designed first around water. So water harvesting, every aspect of the design was first to capture as much water as we could physically in order to be able to irrigate young trees in the first years of life. That's what we had to work with. Pretty much no topsoil, bedrock straight away. So the next step was building soil, and that's the first farm we worked with. So that one was planted just before we arrived, and the trees were planted with a pneumatic drill in the ground. You could not get manual tools in that. And we started planting on contour on some kind of mini swales, all sorts of native aromatic plants in order to bring as much biodiversity as we could and to slow down the rest of the flow of the water. And then some plants came by themselves, like this one, which is called Ponisos in Greek. And that happens to be, we learned it after, the host plant for a very useful bug, which is this guy, which is a parasitic wasp, which is the main predator of the olive fly, which is the main pest of olive trees. And within a year or two, we started having mushrooms popping up everywhere. We started making compost. We didn't have enough materials to start with to make compost. On the second year, we started having enough growth to actually harvest it and make compost. And when I was doing compost, I was doing it by the main road in order for everyone to see it. Because when we arrived and we started designing this farm, all the locals were laughing at us basically because we didn't have access to water, we didn't drill for water, we didn't have access to one of those big irrigation dams that they have in Cyprus coming down from the mountain. So everyone was laughing. And so I started making compost by the road. And in winter, compost gets warm. We made a lot of compost, big piles. And on the second year, we got really happy because people started stealing the compost. So, job was done there. We started very happy that the compost was stolen. We didn't have enough compost to use as fertilizer, and it's not something you really want for olive trees. It's very tricky to use compost on olive trees as a main food if you want, because if the olive tree is too happy, you're gonna have a lot of growth but no flowers and no fruit. So you have to find the right balance for that. But we use compost as inoculation, and then we started growing our own mycorrhizae that we found in the wild and multiplying it and inoculating all the trees. When we planted the first 7,000 olive trees, I planted them in session of 100 trees, and I tried all sorts of different compost, all sorts of different things. There was no literature on the relationship between microorganism and olive trees. Then we started having good result on the growth. And then we had a lot of stones everywhere on our field, so we started gathering them and doing some check dams and putting them as some kind of fencing around. We planted prickly pears as fire breaks as well as food for wildlife and another income from the farm. And basically using everything that we had available. And what we noticed is that, in permaculture, we have this principle that everything gardens, even small changes make big difference. What we noticed is that the birds, which were plentiful in the area, starting using the stones to sit on in the morning to warm up, and then doing their business there. And then we started seeing a lot of growth around the stones and plants that were not around us. And those check dams really worked. And when you have humidity and right management, then you start to have soil creation. And in Cyprus, we have a very, very long growth period, right? It's warm for a very long time. So if you have the right humidity, soil builds really fast. And that's in year two. We're starting creating soil at a really, really fast rate. Then, yeah, that's piles of stones we used to do, birds pulling on it, and some wild asparagus starting popping out everywhere. And that's a very valuable crop. So we started harvesting those and selling them as well. And those were not planted by us. Check dams were working very fine. Most of the rainfall we get in short rain events. That's a change of the rainfall pattern we're experimenting here in Cyprus. Over the last 20 years, we lost about 20% rainfall in total, but the major change is the pattern. So now it doesn't rain, it pours literally. And that creates a lot of erosion, but not in our place. We have zero erosion. So that's our check dam on our overflow of the main dam. So the main dam, which is 17,000 cubic meter of water, was overflowing in year two. So we did very well in harvesting the water. And at the end of that natural creek that we actually revived, we had a spring starting up. So we recreated a spring in the desert, and that spring was on the early maps done by explorers. So that spring was dry for centuries, and then it was revived. So we obviously, whatever was growing on spot, we didn't touch, especially those spiky stuff that everyone removes. Those are Sisyphus lotus, very, very spiky bush, but it has an incredible function, which is called hydraulic redistribution. So you have a really deep taproot, get some water, create shades and shelter. And in those bushes, many other things grows. And it actually sheds leaves, so it creates mulch, and then it creates biology, it creates soil basically. And then you have lots of animals living in there. And again, wild asparagus, which is a very valuable crop. So we didn't touch any of the existing vegetation. We planted some pomegranate as well and other fruit, Mediterranean fruit plants, and we didn't touch whatever was growing in. And the purpose there also was to have a zero kill policy, which always been my ultimate goal. Do not use pesticide, organic or whatsoever, unless it's a really last resort. And recently, I will come very soon to another project that we're running now. We're doing very well with that, and we do not use any pesticide whatsoever. So that's another view of the dam, which was full. So we use concrete in some places where we had to pass cars, otherwise too much erosion. The water, I designed this silt dam. The water goes there first, so I designed it to be twice the size of the bucket of the little tractor that was used in order to collect whatever topsoil that we could collect from the water running to it. So we're gathering basically the neighbor topsoil, and then we can use it other places. So the water goes there, and the silt and topsoil stays there, and then it overflows into the main dam. And then we worked with the Cyprus seed bank, and we found many seeds of wild medicagos, wild alfalfas, if you want. And that we started planting them everywhere. Some were working very well, some not so much. Bear in mind that we're not irrigating the ground cover, we're just doing drip irrigation on the trees with minimal irrigation, using 5 times less irrigation water than a typical olive farmer. And then we started harvesting the first olives, and originally we designed them to be for table olives, because at the time there was more money to be made in table olive rather than olive oil. And the size were not quite big enough for table olives. So we decided to go for, try to make olive oil out of it. And then we sent it to for analysis. And the first year we pressed for olive oil, we got the result, and we tested it for polyphenols, and we got 2,000 milligrams of polyphenol per liter. And at the time, the world record was 1,000. So we doubled the world record on our first try. And then I started to really research what could be the cause of it, and understanding that polyphenols are basically immune system of the plant. So now we had unlocked the nutrition of the soil. We had this rocky soil, but full of minerals, big and small minerals. And now we had all these microorganisms working for us, mining these minerals and feeding them to our trees. So our trees starting to be really, really healthy and having really, really high phenolic content. And then we worked more and more and more on that, and until the last world record that I did was close to 5,000 milligrams per liter. So all all of it. So 40 hectares farm, planted from scratch, everything done with that little machine. I'm not a big fan of machine. I don't like noise. I don't like diesel. So I wanted to minimize the equipment. And that little machine was doing everything, all the jobs needed. It has many, many add-ons to it. And then we decided to take it further. And I started working on other projects. I worked in the mountains as well with bees and natural ways to work on varroa and stuff. And then I came back to olive oil. And I decided to use my job, my experience as a blueprint. And I went to see other farmers. And what Nicole said is very, very important that I don't go to a farmer and tell them, you do it wrong, you should do it that way. Never works. Wherever you are in the world, farming communities are very, very similar, wherever you are. We all share many, many different traits. And also, it's stupid because everything is site specific, right? Yes, there's all sorts of techniques you can use, there's all sorts of things you can use, but the way you're going to be doing it is very, very site specific. So you have to really work with the farmer because he's the only one who really knows the land intimately, and that's the best way to do it. So we found some farmers and we told them, okay, we'd like to buy your olives, twice the market value. We're gonna be working together, see how we can improve your production, and see how we can cut down on your inputs because that's the whole thing. That's where this year we launched Oleafen, which is made from olives from many different farmers. And we decided to do things very, very differently to ditch packaging. Coming from waste management, I know how recycling works, or more, better doesn't work. And so we looked at alternatives and we found seaweed-based packaging, which is edible. So we're gonna ditch glass altogether. We're gonna ditch plastic, obviously. We also test the oil for microplastic because, believe it or not, olive oil has a lot of microplastics. And we decided to standardize the oil and to do it into these monodose. So if you have a bottle of olive oil, if you open it, the polyphenol goes through oxidation. By the time you finish it, you don't have much polyphenol left. So in order to deliver always the same amount of polyphenols, we decided to go for monodose. And that's very important because most of our clients are athletes and professional athletes, and they need to have a specific amount of polyphenol every day. So that's what we're doing now. We're carbon negative. We audited for olive cultivation. So for every liter, it's 16 kilos of carbon, which is removed from the atmosphere and stored in the farm. The packaging removes 2 kilos of carbon because it's seaweed based. So we have a total impact 18 kilos, and that's including delivery and everything in the life of the olive oil. And then one of the farmers called Akaki Grove, I work really, really closely with Elena, the owner there. And the grove was abandoned, mismanaged for decades, and there was one guy basically tilling the whole thing. It was her family grove, planted by her grandfather, but there was one guy looking after it, and just tilling, and it was very, very unproductive. And there, it was very clay soil, very different situation than what we had in the other farms. And I told her, I really like to bring animals into the system. We can speed up restoring the soil with animals because very large scale farm as well, very, very limited budget. So I said, okay, I'd like to bring animals. And Elena told me, well, I'm a vegan and I don't want animals to be killed. So if you do grow animals for milk, cheese, meat, whatever, you do need to kill the animal. You know, you're not gonna keep geriatric animals, feeding them if they do not produce for you. That's the basic of it. So we looked at a way around it, and I reached to my buddy Nick, another Nick, up in the mountain, whose father is a free-range egg producer. And I asked him, you know, what do you do with your chicks? And he told me, well, when they reach 2 years old, they don't lay eggs quite every day. The shell is a bit too thin, you know. Although they live up to 10 years, at 2 years old, they're sent to slaughter. So I said, all right, can I have some chickens? And she said, yeah, of course. So we started with 150 chickens to try it out. And obviously we couldn't buy food for them, right? They're not producing anything. So we had to find a free food. So that's when my, waste management came back. And we say, okay, let's look at the food waste in Cyprus. And it's not the slide here, but the food waste in Cyprus is the highest one in Europe. So about 300 kilos per year per person of food waste. And if you came to Cyprus and you went to a local restaurant, you'll understand it's complete madness. The UK is about 70 kilos. So that's the difference, from 70 kilos to 300 kilos per person. And that food waste goes to landfill, where the landfill here is just a big hole in the ground, right? So it creates methane, it contribute to climate change and stuff like that. So we started collecting food waste with a pilot project with a school. Feeding the chickens are really happy. They don't produce eggs, but that's not what they are for. And they are grazing under the trees, taking care of the ground cover for us, and really doing an amazing job at pest management. So the pilot project, we started with 200 chickens, 800 kids. We are crash grazing them. Well, not quite, but 40 days, electric fencing. We learned the hard way that we needed electric fencing. We had stray dogs coming in the first floor, killing 150 chickens in about half an hour. So we invested in electric fencing, and then we're moving the chickens every 40 days. At the moment, they're grazing on 2,500 square meters. And what we noticed in the areas where we use the chickens, we had zero olive fly. The stories got viral. It just went everywhere. Everyone loved the idea of, a geriatric home for chickens. But we didn't quite got any support locally. So there's some numbers on how much we're saving and how much hens we're going up. What's amazing there is that this farm used to spend close to 8,000 euros a year in products, fertilizer, pesticide, and stuff. And now we are around 300 to 400 euros per year. And that's just zeolite, which is a mineral that we're spraying on the trees. And that acts, it creates a film around the olive so the olive fly doesn't bite it. So that's how much we saved to the farm. And the productivity has increased. Last year, we more than doubled the record year of production. So we doubled their record. So that's Akaki Farm, one of the providers of olives for Leafen. At full capacity, we'll have 12,000 chickens. That's extremely low density. If we were using the same density that free range, would be close to 50,000. So it's a very minimum impact on the thing. And what's crazy is since we stopped any spraying of pesticide, even the organic ones, and since we stopped, the biodiversity have exploded in a place. You can't walk anywhere without getting spider webs in your face now. The ground cover has improved, and you guys came last month, 2 months ago. And yeah, when you walk around, the soil feels really spongy. And I think you guys took some sample of the soil. That was a very, very highly compacted clay, over-tilled soil with a clay pan and everything. And what I noticed is this here the incredible diversity of ground covers of plant growing on the soil, things that we didn't plant it. And that's the famous seed bank that many people talk about. Some seeds that have been there for a very, very long time start sprouting out. So now I see plants that I don't recognize and I have to look them up. Some botany that I never seen before in my jobs here in Cyprus. So really works. There's not really rocket science there. It's basically following principles and listening to the land and listening to the feedback loop. And that's about me, 27 minutes.
Well, well done, Nicholas. That was absolutely superb. Uh, Thank you very, very much indeed. And yeah, I can echo what you said. We had an amazing trip there. Very lucky to turn up on a Saturday for you to give your Saturday up for us, for all of us walking in and having a whiz round and having a look and trying some of your oil, which certainly made us cough. Which I've been told is the right thing to have happened when you got such high levels. So thank you very much indeed. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm going to just quickly whiz through a little bit about me. So uh, another Nick. So the whole Nicks tonight, isn't it? So yeah, I was in the soil food web school for a couple of 3 years, farmer from Norfolk, and I've become a consultant and a mentor for the Soil Food Web. Um, Done a lot of farming throughout my life, mainly conventional, all over the UK, and yeah, a bit of a potted history there of what I've done, um, and. I'm currently on my own business called Wild Soils. We have, well, it's gone up a bit now. We have about 6 clients. Took on a couple yesterday as well, which was great. Make lots of compost. So we use the BioComplete compost. We make sure there's a minimum standard of microorganisms within our compost. We're looking at exploring how we get best value, get the best bang for our buck in terms of microbes that we're putting on the ground. So it could be compost, or it could be our extracts. Doing lots of soil testing to find out what the base um, test was, where we are, and then how progressively it's improved by putting on some of our microbes or maybe some trace elements that from the antagonism between some of the geology we've got in our soils. We also advise on SFIs and CSSs, which are government schemes in the UK, which are all on hold at the moment, which is amusing. And yeah, I've been a member of the mentoring team for a while, which is good. And yeah, I do about 1.5, well, 3 miles of compost a year. So we do about 1.5 in the autumn and 1.5 in the spring for when we're applying our compost, which is great. And it all stemmed really from looking at how bad our soils were. And this is a picture of our soil on the right hand side. And you can see it's sand and silt, not a lot of clay. I think we're about 18% clay. And I sent our soil samples away to be tested. We weren't getting anywhere with our testing models. It came back as a clay soil, which really set alarm bells for me, whether actually this was our soil sample they were sampling. All the data was correct in terms of where the field name and where it was coming from, but I actually did wonder whether anyone testing that soil would say that was a clay soil. And it took me ages to get the results, and I was told that the bag of soil had been in the boot of someone's car for a couple of months. So really amused that the microbial activity there was nearly on high. For moderate, I would have thought anything that had been lived in a bag for and sealed for 2 months probably would have been dead. So I started my journey with the soil food web as I felt that I could do quite a lot of this myself. And we started seeing some amazing differences between our soils. So the picture on the right hand side, the soil on the right hand side of the picture on the right, lovely dark chocolatey color. And the soil on the left from the same field, I stepped 20 yards into the field from the edge of the field. And you can see what years of cultivations, years of synthetic inputs had done to our soils. And the soil on the right, the only difference between the two was the soil on the right had been in a government scheme for 20 years, where we'd applied no fertilizers, no chemicals. It got a great grass and herbage lays in it, and slowly it started to build up biodiversity. So we really started to see the benefits of what we could actually achieve, even though we've damaged our soils through cultivations and synthetic inputs. And now we're at a point where we're making quite a bit of compost, not just only for us. So we like to support and help other growers and farmers, communities. So we help and grow and show how we can do it, or how they can do it. But also for people who don't have the time to do it, we try and offer different types of compost for them to suit their situation, whether they want lots of protozoa or high levels of protozoa or high levels of fungi within their soils. And we still make round towers of compost, 40, 80 bucket piles of compost, so we can manipulate those composts a little bit easier. And then top right, you can see we've got long windrows, and they're all in different stages of being finished and completed. And we can make extracts from those as well. And does this work, right? So I'm a very cynical farmer. And while I was going through this, I thought, God, if it was as easy as this, then everyone would be doing it. And why aren't we all doing it? So we picked a couple of fields, and we did a test between half the field that has no inputs of any biology. So it's just staying as it is, but no other inputs. So kind of organic, but with no other inputs. And then the right-hand side of this field just had biology. So we treated it exactly the same, but had biology, and that had some compost, physical compost, and also extracts. And then over a year period, you see our base testing. We're very high in bacteria, over 5,000, 5,500 micrograms a gram, and then our fungi was pretty low at 65, not getting to the right successional stage to grow a barley crop, and our protozoa hardly anything. So our fungal to bacterial ratio, where it needs to be 1-to-1, was 0.01. So not great, but typical for a farm in the UK, I would suggest. And then over time, as we built the levels of biology up, we started to see some amazing results. And now we are 0.6, so we've still got a bit to go. This was May last year, so we're going to get to May this year, and we're going to test again. So I'm really excited to see what we might see this year. Our protozoa levels, nearly 200,000, which was great. And our fungal to bacterial ratio getting closer. As we've increased those protozoa numbers, our bacteria have gone down. Also, we had some nematodes in there as well, but the screen wasn't big enough to pop in the nematodes. So that's what we're seeing at Kenhill, and certainly at other farms we're working with. And even a waste product comes into use. So this is a machine that cuts the heads off our weeds that which are, as we're going through the transition, we're seeing growing, sterile brome grasses, black grasses as well, and we're able to cut the heads off. And this is only for a short period of time, because as we start cutting the heads off, they'll start flowering lower and lower and lower. So I hope our soil successions will change and our soil will change, that they just won't like those habitats. And we take all those seeds and green material, and we turn it into compost. And because we go through the thermophilic stages, we get to the other end, and I left a pile like this for over a year, and no grasses grew from compost made from sterile brome seeds and blackgrass seeds. So we try and use everything we possibly can to build the biodiversity back up into our soils, and we can then see how this changes. So our soils, the picture on the left hand side is a typical picture of our soil, and that's what 5 tons a hectare looks like of compost. So lots of gaps. It's not totally smothered, but then when we apply extracts as well with that, the picture on the right was kind of like a year later, as you can start seeing the fungi really become very active within the soil profile. And this was really exciting. And certainly the first time I've ever seen in my whole farming career, when you walk into a field and dig up some soil, you can visibly see the fungi, and the smell of the soil is just utterly, utterly insane. So I think we're about there. So that's a bit about me. We're going to take a break. We have a bit of a promotion for you now, and then we're going to come back with some questions. Thank you.
My journey into the realm of soil microbiology started with the desire to provide good and nutritious food for me and my family.
I see food as being fundamental, and food comes from soil.
And if we want to be able to continue to feed our population, we must change the way we farm.
Even in the organic world, we're forcing ourselves to alter the soils, and we're not working with the microbes and working with nature.
One day I was listening to a podcast where Dr. Lane Ingham was talking about soil food web, and it just blew my mind.
I was just taking copious notes. My mind was just blown with all of the connections that were coming to light for me.
The course was very well organized, professionally produced, and both the video courses and supporting written materials I thought to be very thorough.
They bring in various experts in webinars, summits, and educators on the school.
Just being able to use the forum, there's always things going on and people to identify this organism or that organism.
Having a mentor to support me has just made me learn so much more than just going through the theory.
And I'm very, very happy that I am able to see what is in the soil and what I can do to improve.
So many lands are waiting to be restored, so you won't have a deficiency of projects.
I look forward to improving the soil and offering more advice in the future and growing my business, all thanks to the Dr. Lane Soil Food Web course.
The Soil Food Web School has changed my life, and it might as well change yours.
Spring is in the air, and there's never been a better time to launch your career in soil regeneration than right now. This April, we're making the Springboard 2025 offer available for just $2,499. With the Springboard 2025 offer, you can register for the Soil Food Web Foundation courses for just $2,499, saving over $2,500 off the regular price of $5,000. You'll also get 2 free bonus courses: the Introduction to Permaculture and the Soil Sponge Workshop, worth $599. The total value of this bundle is $5,599, but you'll only pay $2,499, saving you $3,100. That's over 50% off. There are only 60 places available in the 2025 Springboard registration cycle, so please don't delay. The Soil Food Web School offers a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're not completely satisfied, you can get a full refund in the first 30 days, so long as you've watched 32 lectures or less of the foundation courses, where they cover all the science and application methods behind the soil food web approach. This is a series of 63 online lectures, each followed by a quiz. You can log in at any time, watch a lecture as many times as you like, prepare your notes, and then take the multiple choice quiz. Each lecture is approximately 45 minutes in length, and we recommend that you dedicate around 150 hours to completing the foundation courses. You get to download all the lecture slides and the FC course manual. You also get access to the FC forum, where you can ask questions that Dr. Elaine's team will answer for you. The Introduction to Permaculture is an 18-lecture course that covers a wide array of permaculture principles and themes, delivered by Graham Bell, previous chair of Permaculture Scotland and longest-serving permaculture teacher in the UK with 31 years experience teaching on 6 continents. Permaculture is a regenerative design approach that can be applied to just about anything, from water management, growing systems, dwellings, and much more. The Soil Sponge Workshop is delivered by educator and author Dee Pershaus. This 5-session course is all about regenerating the soil sponge for flood, drought, and wildfire resilience. It builds on the successes of innovative land managers around the world who are saving huge sums in damages from extreme weather events and crop diseases, while restoring the dignity and profitability of farming. Dee teaches participatory workshops, both in person and online, helping to show the nested relationships between soil health, human health, water cycles, and climate resiliency. Financing options are now available so you can pay at your own pace with a firm. And join the soil revolution today.
Great. Thank you for that. I need to try and move on. Is that letting me move on? Here we go. Right, Nicolas, if you can come back on screen. Thank you. And you're both on mute, so if you can come off mute, please. And we'll go to our first question. We have 30 minutes for questions. So our first question. What first step should I take in regenerating my soils? Who wants to go first? Nicole.
Oh, I feel like I hogged the time. I want to hand it to Nicolas, but I think that the first step really is that observation and spending time and benchmarking. And this is the piece I think is sometimes we don't know where we're at to know where we're going. But yeah, that would be a good first start.
Nicolas, what do you think to that?
Yeah, I agree about observation. It really depends on where you are, site specific. If you're in Cyprus or if you're in the UK, it's going to be very different steps. In Cyprus, you will look for water, so you will start every drop of rain, you will be out and watching wherever the rain flows, wherever the water flows. You're going to make sure you're going to, slow, spread, and sink all of that. If you're in the UK, it might be very different. So observation, yeah.
And something I'm going to add and maybe provoke Nicole for another answer from our Create training. I mean, one of the biggest things for me about regenerating our soils is our mindset, Nicole. Yes or no?
Oh, I mean, I think mindset is 100% of everything that we're doing, right? It's not like a little bit of mindset, I'll just slip it in there. It's literally, which is the observation piece, right? We can observe and look at landscape and go, oh, it looks messy, or we can observe from a mindset of it looks diverse and abundant. And that's what I love with working with people is how that mindset changes from kind of that separation to actually connection. And I love seeing my ranchers get really excited about foxes or really excited about the partridges, and suddenly we're still profitable, right? We're still able to run a business, but how you relate to the landscape really shifts.
And what about you, Nicolas, on that? I mean, coming from Cyprus there, I mean, what do farmers think of your approach now? Are people getting on board with what you're doing?
Yeah, because it's profitable. And at the end of the day, a farmer, wherever he is, we're not talking a permaculture farm, backyard stuff. If someone livelihood depends on it, the only thing that matters is, whatever's at the end of the year or at the end of the month. So because what we're doing is cutting down drastically the inputs and creating an output that has a much more value, added value, then yeah, of course, when that works, then they listen for sure. And then slowly the mindset change and they start having this systemic thinking, but we always start with the money.
Brilliant. Thank you. So our next question then, if I can pull that over. Here we go. So Eva has said, this is an interesting one because I got a lot to say on this one. Doesn't the grass steal nutrients from the trees? Or isn't it grass? The grass under the fruit and avocado trees. What do we think to that?
Oh, well, Nicholas, you go first.
Right. In our case, we look more again for water, and we have to carefully manage it. They do not steal nutrient. They're actually feeding the soil. They're breaking down that compacted soil. They're improving water infiltration, water retention. They found carbon from the atmosphere and store it into their root system. And if you can turn that grass quickly to feed other microorganisms, and if you do have animals, you speed up that process. You can cut it as well at the right time, and that will feed your soil too. So no, it's actually quite the opposite. We do need ground cover. Don't know what grass means. We have a lot of different grasses and different plants growing on it from all sorts of families and root systems and different symbiosis and stuff. But no, when we places where we do not have animals, we cut it in order to minimize competition for water. Just when the flowering time starts, when it's very important the tree gets as much water as we can, and we can't provide it, and especially now these 3 years we're in a very very serious drought in Cyprus. There's no water in reservoirs. We're 18% before summer. So no, they do not steal nutrients. They're actually quite the opposite.
And Nicholas, just to add to that, so if someone's going into a system from a conventional system and they've gone cold turkey and they're now putting grasses or cover crops or whatever it might be around other plants, trees, whatever it might be, without biology in the soils, because it's just come from one system, so it's in shock,
yeah.
and it's going into another system. Would that not take more time to kind of that system to work, or does it, in your opinion or your experience, does it happen kind of straight away?
No, you need the biology always. You might have, if you go cold turkey and you go from a till system, I'm talking tree systems here. I'm not talking annuals, right? If you go cold turkey and then you have go from tilling and herbicide and zero growth and chemical fertilizer and basically a very poor soil, then yeah, the plant will take whatever is left into that soil, which is probably NPK in salt form, in chemical form, and that will compete. But if you combine it with putting the biology under the right condition and the right moisture, it turns really quickly. So yeah, you have to do the whole thing.
Okay, Nicole?
I think sometimes what we see are rules that are true in conventional, and then the rules change once we have flocculated, biologically diverse soil. So I feel like this is, well, one, there's water, two, there's nutrients, but there's also allelopathy, so chemicals that certain plants might be releasing out their roots. So when we end up in more monocultural situations under trees where that grass sward might not actually be healthy, as we can see plants that are reducing root growth of the tree that you're wanting to grow. Personally, I would never want to see grass underneath an avocado tree. I'm always asking the question of, how does this grow in nature? an avocados grow in a deep, deep mulch, and if there's grasses in there, then what's that telling me about that ecosystem? So really trying to replicate as much as possible that natural ecosystem. But no, we certainly see the sward changing. So I think in the transition, this is the piece of like, what do I need to put into place to ensure that we're not seeing competition? And then there's some plants, like there's some grapevines that really struggle. And then that's just part of our breeding processes. What have we done? Are those plant or vine roots communicating to microbiology anymore? As we're seeing microbial breakdown between vines to microbes or grasses or whatever that is that you're dealing with, that can be creating a situation. So I think for some crops, you really need to watch this in transition. But again, ask the question, how does this work in nature?
Yeah, and we had an experience at Ken Hill with our row crops where we decided to do like a pasture cropping. So we had 50 centimeters of quite an extensive mix of herbs, and then 50 centimeters of a cereal crop. And then certainly the first 2 years, because I was none the wiser, in our soils, our sands and silts, I think it did rob quite a lot of things. But now we've introduced microbes. The soil's gone away from its shock period. We're now in recovery. We're seeing that now change. So I would agree with both you, Nicholas and Nicole, that it changes. The whole thing now changes because you have biology, and certainly has for us in our row crops. That is for sure. Great, thank you for that question. And we have Louisa has a question for us. We have about 70 acres of mature apple orchard in New Hampshire, USA. Do you know anyone anywhere in the world using soil food web methods on mature apple trees? Some were planted in the 60s, more in the 80s, 90s, and noughties. Variety of different tree density sizes, prunings, plans, etc. No true high density plantings. Nicholas.
Do I know of everyone that does that?
Yeah, do you know anyone who's doing that?
No, I'm pretty sure around New Zealand, in Hastings there must be some guys. No, I'm not aware.
Nicole?
Yeah. Well, what happened in Hastings is we did have pretty strong soil food. That example that I shared was the soil food web method on mature apple trees. The issues were a lot of the trees in Hastings anyway were planted especially for organic production, were planted in the 90s. And a lot of them were Braeburn. They were varieties that weren't planted for natural resistance. So they had huge issues with powdery, and a part of that I think was the hybridization. So that industry really went through a massive rough patch in the 2010. So we went from I think around 26, 30 organic producers that were doing this down to 2, and it was more around what was happening in the industry than this, but also the amount of lime sulfurs and things that people were using, even those using biology. I think the general consensus was 1 around varieties, but 2 around export markets. But I do think, yeah, there are other examples around the world. And I feel like Nick Patterson was actually doing a really, really good job. And yeah, he pulled it out because of the market. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Very sad.
Someone just answered in the chat about wood chip handbook. Maybe that's worth looking at.
Okay, I haven't got chat at the moment, I'm afraid.
Who wrote the organic orchard? Michael, not Michael Phillips. Michael passed away a few years ago.
Japan did research on apple orchards. Only one here.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we've helped Louisa, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I can't help. Yeah.
I'm afraid.
In the chat, someone's mentioning Ben Ranklin working on RBM which is ramial bark mulch. And I know that in Canada, they've been using it a lot of it. I'm not knowledgeable enough in that technique, but I heard a lot of really good thing about it. And and he says that did some research on apple orchard using that method. So yeah, that might work. Worth looking for.
And Nicolas, just I know you gave us a great talk on when we came to your place on biology or your olives trees you've got there. I mean, are you making compost at the moment to put or extracts to go in your soils
No, I
around your
don't need
olives?
that.
You don't need
I
it.
don't need that anymore. No. I never quite used compost as fertilizer.
Yep.
For the reason that I explained, because you can release nitrogen for many years. And it's very important to get the right amount for olive trees. I used it as inoculation in also, mycorrhizae, homegrown, home multiplied mycorrhizae and stuff like that. But now there's really no need. And now that we have the chicken grazing on it, yeah, I've got the right amount, and the olive trees that were producing every 2 years, because that's the nature of the olive tree, right? It's a biennial production. And when you don't look after them properly, they go into back to that cycle. And now we broke that cycle and now they produce every year. And yeah, zero fertilizer, zero compost. All is working by itself now. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Tanya's got a question. Any suggestions for what to plant under a raspberry cane to suppress the weeds and hold the water? She was thinking of several there. Who wants to go? Nicolas.
I'd say mulch. Mulch the hell out of it.
Mulch the hell out of it.
Yeah. Mulch is the way to go. But otherwise, if I had to choose between those one, nasturtium is very lazy. It's gonna grow up that raspberry cane. But yeah, chamomile is not, might work. Alyssum might be a bit more bushy, yeah, but I would say mulch it.
Mulch it. Mulch it. Nicole?
Mulch it. Whitewood chips, though.
I was going to ask that.
Fungi.
I was going to ask exactly that question. What wood chips are you going to use?
Yeah, or whatever you can find, and then you pre-compost it, right? So you don't use it. Well, in the technique we mentioned before, they use it straight. You chip it and you mulch it in what they call in French the BRF. I can't remember. I just said it now in English. It's RBM in English. So you take the ramial bark, you ship it, and then you put it straight away. You need at least 20 centimeters for it to work, and that's supposed to trigger the fungal network straight away if it's fresh. I never tried that, never had the chance to have that kind of material at disposal. But if I want to mulch something, I use whatever I can, but I pre-compost it. Right, so I start the process. And then when I see that it's working, this is what I do with all the pruning material of the olive trees, right? So we chip everything. We lay in really big piles. So there's a bit of everything in it. There's some leaves, there's some woody material. We lay in big pile. We don't have water to spare. Water it, right? So we're hoping for rain. And then once we have the fungus coming in, then we're ready to spray for mulch.
Got it. Brilliant. Thank you. Nicole, anything to add to that?
No, that Nicolas, that will make sense to me. We do put whitewood chips straight underneath vines, but that whitewood chip is just such bio food. We don't and I think you just look at, if you put mulch down, just notice what grows. It's going to tell you a lot about the quality of that mulch. Does nothing grow because it's robbing nitrogen, or it's got chemicals that are suppressing growth. That's not necessarily what I'm looking for when I'm putting it under raspberry canes, for instance. Or then does it grow a lot of sort of bushier, woody weeds? Then I might be like, oh, that's not the companion that I need under that. So it's really reading the plants. What is it that you see that really flourishes? Listen, one thing I quite like is cow parsley. We've used that in orchards. It can shoot up quite a big seed head, but what it makes is this beautiful mulch. And so I feel like the single seed head and the single taproot are easy to manage. So if anyone wants to play with that, I'd like to see your pictures, but we've used it in apples anyway.
Brilliant. Thank you both for that. Okay, so Michael has a question to all of you. Do you ever encounter aggressive, unwanted fungi? And how do you deal with that? Who wants to go with that one? Start anyway. Nicole.
Yeah, I was working on an operation that had armillaria in their greenhouses. I think I've told you about it, Nick. And that actually got to the point where they were coming in with vehicles and taking all of the soil out because they couldn't deal with their organic. And when they had one greenhouse left, I said, let's do a trial. And so we did 200 liters of a most beautiful compost tea you've ever seen. And I said to the producer, like once a week, just put 20 liters on. But he was making 200 liters every 3 days. So he put 200 liters on. And he grew the most phenomenal crop, but they've never seen the armillaria again. But it really tipped the balance towards potassium. So they had massive growth and no fruit, which didn't make anybody happy. The following year, they had a fantastic crop. But I think the way in my mind is if there is an imbalance like that, it's like, how do I send in the cleanup crew? And then what's causing the conditions? What have I been doing that means that the soil have had a buildup of those diseases? What's happening with minerals? What's happening with microbiology? What's happening with my management? We can bring in something like extreme, like a compost tea every 3 days, but you still need to address why was this particular situation happening? Yeah. So I feel like these diseases, the aggressive fungi, if you want to call them aggressive fungi, they're just telling you something's out of whack, and they're also secondary. Like this is not a primary cause. It's not the fungal disease that's the problem. It's what allowed that disease to get in. They're just coming to clean up a problem. So what are you doing that's creating the conditions, basically?
It's a bigger problem. Is you got to look further before that problem, haven't you, as to what's caused it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the same. Yeah, it's a common issue in olive grove, actually. Well, it's commonly called root rot, especially in very hot climate where people have access to irrigation. So we had farmers coming to us, and trees were dying. And then you look at the root system, and it's just when you water and it's really hot with very alkaline water. So I have a bit of feedback here with the sound. You create the perfect condition for unwanted fungi, and that's why we change the irrigation pattern, and we actually do not irrigate olive trees in the summer very much, even if it's 40 degrees. We let them struggle a little bit. We're making sure they have the right amount of water during the winter, which is normally cooler, and that's when they need actually the most water. We're basically doing deficit irrigation, right? So everything is about biomimicry. So if we do not get, and if we have access to water, if we do not get enough rain, we do deficit irrigation. So rain doesn't happen in the summer here. So watering crops in the summer creates a perfect condition for fungus. If there is a threat for the crop and it needs to be, urgent action, we'll be using a bit of, told them to use a bit of copper, which is really like the last resort. But, when you're about to lose all your trees, it's something you do. But you're really trying to address the reason for that fungus to be there.
Brilliant. Thank you. Um, okay, well, that's all the questions they've got on the screen, but I've got a couple here I'd like to ask that have come through that haven't been put on the presentation. So, and Mario asks, I would like to know how Nicolas manages cover cropping in his olive groves, and how does he sow alfalfa seeds and other cover crop species? What kind of machines do you use, Nicolas?
No, I don't really like using machines as much as I can. I like the
I
sound of
thought
birds
that would
and
be your answer to that one.
yeah. No, but uh, we do use machines. When we want to establish a cover crop, right? So the first project I showed, there was no, there's nothing growing really. So there we did establish more stuff, and especially at the beginning. And so we saw all sorts of different things. We experimented with all sorts of different things. But because we had no irrigation, we couldn't spare any water to irrigate, and it's very tricky to get it right when you don't really know the rainfall. So we did the old school Fukuoka method of seed balls, where you mix clay, seeds, a little bit of compost for inoculation, and then you create those little balls, and then just throw them around. And then when there's enough rainfall, it does melt. So then you get the timing right always. In the other project, we didn't really sow anything. At some point, they did sow some veg, unsuccessfully. They didn't time it right. It's all about the timing here with the rainfall. But there was no need. As soon as we started doing the right practices, and the diversity came by itself. It's incredible how many seeds either are coming by birds or are already in the soil, right? They're coming up. Now the diversity is crazy. Regarding managing it is basically turning it into soil. So we're trying to do that as fast as possible. That's why we try to get animals in if we can. If not, we need to cut it and let it rot on the floor.
Great. Thank you very, very much indeed. And yeah, I appreciate you taking time to answer those questions. Just to kind of sum up, I would just like literally a minute from you both, maximum a minute, of your kind of take home messages to people who are on this webinar, advice, or just something that they can remember and get enthused by, please. Nicole.
Take heed, take hope, go and find people that are further along the track than you, and find those trusted partners to really, one, start your journey, or if you are in that refinement stage, be asking much more broadly. I mean, I think Nicolas's example of what does it take and what does it look like to have a system that doesn't require any inputs, that's the goal, that's the dream, and how to do that to ensure that you are profitable, you are taking care of your place in that transition. I think, yeah, go work with people, and if you're that person, start mentoring more people. Let's make this go viral and yeah, inoculate everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nicole and Nicolas.
Yeah, just get going. Whatever scale, just use the scale you can manage. Even if you live in a city, just find a little patch somewhere. If it's under a tree in the street, do guerrilla, whatever. The thing is, like when you start doing this, you'll see change happening really quickly, and that really gives you hope. And it's quite important those days to show that we can really turn this around, and it really works. And it works really fast. So just, don't think twice. There's plenty of information out there. There's plenty of people doing it. You don't hear much about all these pioneers. Just get going.
Brilliant.
Whatever's game.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo what you both have said. Thank you so much. And guys, just remember, next week we got our Steps to Rapid Soil Regeneration, and it's the Soil Food Web approach made easy. So please come and join us next week. And thank you so much for being there, all of you. Remember, you can watch again on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and all the other social media sites. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming along, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Nicholas.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget to click that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to stay updated with all our new videos.